Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to see all of you here in the room and also those of you who have logged in remotely. My name is Sonia Alvarez Robinson, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator for today's conversation. Today is a spectacular milestone for us in the journey of developing and launching our Institute strategic plan. Today is really like our commencement. We've put in a lot of hard work over the last year, and it's culminated in this moment where now we are preparing to transition into our implementation phase, where the work will continue. We will continue to connect and build our community and to engage so many of you as we look to our future, a bright and exciting future in developing leaders who advance technology and improve the human condition. Today's conversation is going to be in a fireside chat format. Bless the fireside. We have a wonderful panel for you today, our great leaders who have brought us to this point today. Our president, Ángel Cabrera, who really championed this effort. Our Provost McLaughlin and Dean Alavi, who have been really guiding us and steering this process and bringing us to this point. And many of you in the room who served on our project team and the working groups and played such important and significant roles in this process. So I have a number of questions that we've prepared to get the conversation going, but this is really about a discussion with you. And so I look forward to your Q&A in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that, and we'll have an opportunity to engage you in this way. For those of you who are in the room, there is a text number that you can text, and the questions will be presented so that you can have an opportunity to participate with us as well. Are you ready to get started?
We're ready.
Okay. So the first question is for President Cabrera. So you launched this process with a unique approach called appreciative inquiry. Can you talk a little bit about that philosophy and where did it come from? Where did you get that idea? And why was it so important to you to start our strategic planning with that approach?
Well, let me start by thanking you, Sonia, because you've been just an amazing force in leading us through this process. You and your team, none of this would have happened with the work you did to gather information, to collect it, to really support the process from the beginning. It has been just a delight to work with you guys, and I want to thank you for it. And it's been such a great pleasure to get to work closely with Steve and Maryam and get to know them better as colleagues. But so the idea, I've always believed first that it is essential that any kind of organization we need to have a real sense of purpose and a shared sense of direction. But none of that matters if it is a document that exists on a shelf collecting dust. It only matters if everybody feels a sense of ownership of it. And you cannot achieve that sense of ownership unless you bring people to the table, unless people are part of the process from the beginning. I've also always believed that we're at our best when we build on our strengths. That strategies ought to be vehicles to dream big, to think about what makes your organization unique and excellent. And appreciative inquiry is just a tool to do precisely that. It's a tool to bring people together, to reflect on strengths, to dream together. Now, honestly, when we started the process and the four of us had conversations, I had hoped that a few hundred people would show up to these sessions. I was shocked when I got the final number and almost 6,000 people in our community had participated. And that in itself sends an incredible message that people in this community care. Yeah. that you're not just a student coming here to get a degree and leave, but you care about the institution. You're not just a professional, a faculty member, staff member who comes here because that's your job and you then go home and forget about it. That you're not just an alum who one day came to here and left and never remembers it. That people somehow, our lives have been or are being transformed by this institution, that we care so much that when they ask us, do you want to come and dream together, people show up. So it is, honestly, I love the content of the plan. I love the ideas. These are some very big ideas. But I love even more how we got to those ideas together as a community. I think that is the most powerful aspect of this plan.
I can say, having done a lot of strategic planning in organizations over decades, this was really, I think, that energy and focusing on strengths was the first time that I saw people so thrilled and optimistic and excited, and that hope for something really amazing. It was great. It was a wonderful experience. So Dean Maryam Alavi from the Scheller College of Business. So you were asked to co-chair the steering committee, and that it had 62 members. In addition to yourself, that steering committee worked to draft the first set of ideas for mission, vision, strategic themes. What were some of the things that were highlights to you for that process?
Well, first of all, I want to sincerely express my gratitude to all the members of the steering committee, the working groups, and your team, Sonia, for doing an amazing job. I'm truly humbled by their creativity, their tenacity, and their commitment to this process. So the process was really what engaged me more and made me most interested in the whole thing. It was a process that was, first of all, there were so many people engaged in it. And so the scope and the sheer volume of individuals involved, that in itself was something to manage. You know, I'm dean of a business school, so I'm always thinking about process orchestration, process management. So, and the interesting aspect about the process was that initially it started as a divergent process, meaning we were trying to get as many people engaged, get as many ideas, as many perspectives. So it kind of opened up, and we wanted to be really inclusive. Now that was great. We ended up with a lot of amazing ideas and perspectives from students, faculty, community, alums, etc. But then we were swimming in an ocean of data, right? All that information that we had to sort through and bring it together, go through a convergence piece of the process to come up with something that was coherent, inspiring, and representative. So that was, there were times that I would sit there and say, we'll never get there. It's just so huge, but everyone was so creative and wonderful that we got there, and we got there in a great way. So the process itself was fascinating to me, the way, and the orchestration and the structuring and the management of it.
Yeah, thank you. There was so much heart in that too, because when the strategic consultants went out and stood on the walkway or in the line at the midnight breakfast, or they had photo booths and students were there, we had lots of pizza with the students, and then sort of the master synthesizer, Troy, who's in this room, brought all that data together, and then out popped like real insight that we could use. It was just such a really wonderful process to watch. So Provost Steven McLaughlin, you started this journey with us as the Dean of the College of Engineering, and interested in your thoughts about highlights for you. Like, what were some of the things that stood out from you?
I think to follow on a little bit what's been said before, it can be messy. I think we're all kind of talking around that, and it did feel messy, you know, at times. But that kind of convergence that you talked about, Maryam, I think was extraordinarily rewarding. You know, there were so many, and through the appreciative inquiry and through each event, there were so many stories, so many things that people highlight as strengths of Georgia Tech, the things that we're proud about, the things that we think we're best at. You know, I think the thing that sticks with me is we tend to think that those are big things. So I'm really proud of something big that evolved over multiple years. But I think the thing that sticks with me is how much the personal connections between the people involved were essential to essential to the development of the program, and really how important the small moments were.
Yeah.
Not just in the conversation among the group, but as people reflected on what we're proud of, what we really value. It's those, 1 or 2 or 5 minute interactions that an alum remembers, or a student remembers, or a faculty remembers. That's really kind of the core of who it is we are, the kind of the humanity in tech. And I think that really came out in the plan.
Yeah, it sure did. Yeah, we had some of those basement early breakfasts with community leaders, the superintendents of the schools, and the philanthropic community, and they came out. What were some of the things that you heard, President Cabrera, from the community that you felt like really kind of pushed you the most to think differently?
No, by the way, I enjoyed that part of the process very much. I mean, and I appreciate what the consulting team did, because I did a handful of those sessions myself, and you did that times many times. But what was great, some of the sessions that I did, that I led myself, was with those community leaders, CEOs of companies around us, leaders of educational institutions, K-12, of nonprofit organizations. Once again, they showed up. I didn't have to insist. It was like, would you like to think with us? Help us from your perspective. What is it that Georgia Tech needs to do better? Everybody showed up, which again sent me this message that people around here care a lot about this institution and what we do. And then the conversations, once again, actually, even I thought the divergence was going to be more brutal, and the work to converge would be harder, and it actually started converging early on. At least in my mind, I could see the themes and the patterns very early. People in our community really have a great sense of they rely on Georgia Tech for our future. They see us as this anchor institution that has made Atlanta and Georgia and the entire region better. And there's this sense that, okay, Georgia Tech needs to keep leading us forward. And that came across in all the conversation.
Kind of a daunting thought to know that there's so many people outside of Georgia Tech that are really looking at our institution to provide that leadership.
Yep. In economic development, in innovation, in how do we position Atlanta as the next place where innovation happens, as a new hub of innovation, but a better hub, a more inclusive hub. That idea of inclusive innovation came across in those conversations really strongly.
Yeah. And it was through that we were able to identify these 6 strategic theme areas, and each of those have such a synergy and reinforcement across them. So let's talk a little bit about those in some specificity. I'll start with Provost McLaughlin around the Amplify Impact. So the goal for Amplify Impact is to embrace our power as agents of change for the public good and generate talent, ideas, and solutions with unmatched impact and scale to help define and address the most critical problems of our time, locally and globally. So as you envision, the upcoming, that goal coming to life in the area that you lead around academics, but also research and economic development programs, well, how do you see that Amplify Impact sort of emerging in our work?
Well, I see the Amplify Impact piece as kind of our DNA, right? That's the research and education mission, kind of our motto of progress and service. That's like the beating heart of Georgia Tech, kind of where it is we've been over more than 100 years. Impact in research, impact in education. On the research side, we're already among the very top in terms of funding among institutions that don't have a medical school. The aspirations are to be even more, not just in terms of funding, but in terms of the impact. Really, the core research mission, which is really over half of what it is we do. I think on the education side, thinking about things like the online master's program, thinking about experiential education, the international component, Grade X, entrepreneurship, the kind of experiences that our students can have, not just in the core of their curriculum, but in the activities outside. And I think the Amplify Impact piece really talks to that, talks about what our next level aspirations are, and really what's the beating heart of Georgia Tech, the research and education mission.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it was so exciting to hear all the stories when we did the visioning process about where we are making such amazing impact, like things that I had never heard about before. And the idea that we're actually going to amplify that and take that even higher, that's just like amazing to me. So Dean Alavi, this is a area of great passion for you, is innovation. And so in our Champion Innovation, our goal is to champion our leadership position as an engine of innovation and entrepreneurship, and collaborate with other public and private actors to create economic opportunity and mobility, and position Atlanta and Georgia as examples of inclusive innovation. So how do you envision Georgia Tech units working together to pursue this goal?
So let's sort of dig a little deeper into this whole concept of innovation. Okay, we can teach a whole course on that, but I'll only take, I promise, I only take a minute. So the idea of innovation is, first of all, let me start by making the distinction between innovation and discovery. Okay? Discovery is to uncover things that are unknown or unseen. Our research focuses on that. Innovation is basically about creating value. Okay? It's taking ideas and then matching them and aligning them with some big problems or big opportunities to create value. Okay? So in that process, you have a piece that is about ideas and techniques and solutions and technologies. You have a piece that is about problem solving or leveraging opportunities. And then there is a piece about value creation. So by definition, the whole process of innovation is a collaborative process. It requires multiple entities playing different roles. Someone with the idea, someone with a deep understanding of the context, so you can understand problems and opportunities. And then someone that is orchestrator, that brings the idea and the problems together to create value and invest the resources to do so. So with that definition, we know that whole process of innovation, particularly if one like us, Georgia Tech, that aspires to innovate in big ways, you really have to bring many people with different perspectives. You need to be inclusive to be able to address the problems or opportunities that are out there. So that's the process of innovation that we need to focus on.
I love that. Yeah. And I think, through the implementation phase, we'll be looking for your expertise and guidance in this area as we make our plans for much more detailed and tactical activities. Okay, so President Cabrera, this is something you've written a book about, which is this global view. So our Connect Globally goal is to strengthen our role as a convener of worldwide collaboration and build a global learning network to expand our reach and amplify our impact. So how do you see Georgia Tech units considering our global footprint as they create their unit level goals?
Yeah, I think this is a very important statement that we're making in the strategic plan. You've heard Steve talk about the sense of impact. right? We're going to define our success not by our prestige or reputation and what others think of us, but the difference that we make in the world. And we make a difference, first and foremost, by the students, the graduates that come out of our programs and what they themselves do. And second, by the ideas that come out of our labs. You've heard about the role of innovation and how that is ingrained in who we are and how we create value. This idea of global engagement is we want to do that, yes, at the local level. We are very proud of being a public university in the state of Georgia, of being really the anchor in this wonderful city of Atlanta. But we're equally proud of being a global institution. And those things are not at odds. In fact, think of how proud we are as a city to have the airport that we have, to be the world hub of Delta Airlines, to have the busiest airport in the world. That connectivity with the rest of the world makes Atlanta be the special place it is. Well, we are the Hartsfield Airport or the Delta Airlines of talent and ideas. And because we are a known and respected brand around the world, because of that, every year we get to draft some amazing talent from around the world. Two of us on this panel were born outside of the United States. Every year, and one of the two of us is here because of Georgia Tech, because I was one of the thousands of young people around the world who dream with the opportunity of come to a great American university. That's what brought me to the U.S. in the first place. Think about the talent that we attract. Think about the talent that we send out to the world when about 60% of our students in a program that, by the way, initially was led by Provost McLaughlin in an earlier incarnation. And the impact of and so our commitment to both attract talent, to make sure that also our American students, our home students, are prepared to engage in a very interconnected world. To make sure that our solutions, the projects we work on, the research that we work on, that may have an impact in our own backyard, but they may bring about solutions that are relevant all around the world. And a big part of the discussions we had during this process was around what are the big issues that we want to have an impact on, right?
Yep.
I mean, we want to have an impact, as you've heard. We want to make sure that Georgia Tech is contributing to solving the biggest problems that we face. What are those? Well, we started talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. The world has made an effort to list, what those problems are. In some ways, you can think of the Sustainable Development Goals as the strategic plan for the planet, right? Mm-hmm. So now our responsibility is, okay, well, how are we going to have an impact in those areas? Through the students that we educate, through the ideas that we produce, and how we're going to have that impact both locally but also globally. And again, we are not going to accept this false dichotomy that either you are a global institution or you're a local institution. We are a proud Atlanta-based institution with an immense global reach.
People really resonated with the Sustainable Development Goals, and we know that that work showed up in so many different parts of the plan in the various iterations. And as we were thinking about, where does it fit? It fits everywhere. There's so much interconnectedness across those things. Okay, let's talk a little bit about expanding access. Provost McLaughlin, I know this is something that is dear to your heart. The Expand Access goal is to empower people of all backgrounds and stages of life to learn and contribute to technological and human progress. Can you talk about what this means to you personally?
Well, probably since we're in a small group and it's just among friends, I'm probably not supposed to say I have a favorite part of the strategic plan, but I think this is it because I think it tugs both tugs on my heart and is in my head. And I think when people think about expanding access, they think about making sure that students can be supported financially, that students that come from families that don't have the financial means, that we have the ability to support them, or that we have the most diverse, equitable, and inclusive student body, and who we bring to our campus kind of represents the broader community that we live in. I think quite honestly, that's probably the biggest reason I wanted to come into the provost role, is to have the biggest possible impact on making sure that we can attract those students and that those students can succeed. But the expand access is much more than that. I think people may not realize, we're now almost 40,000 students, and about 15,000 of those students come through our online master's programs. And we finally, through that, I think what a lot of people thought of was an experiment. Hey, let's try this MOOC thing, and let's be one of the first to develop an online degree. Well, we're now educating 15,000 Georgia Tech students, and they are real students. And they're in real degree programs. It's not, there's not an asterisk on the degree programs that we offer them. The real programs. Actually, when I'm out talking to alums, you start meeting people that are in those degree programs, and the comment I almost get always is, "Did you have to make it so hard?" Because I think people think of those programs as somehow easier, and so we're reaching out to whole new demographics. Whole new age groups that we really didn't have access to, and now they have access to a Georgia Tech education at an unbelievably low cost. And of course, K through 12, the kinds of things that we can do to reach out to the local community, how we can better connect to the community through maybe online programs or in-person programs. We have a number of programs already in place that we hope to expand to better connect to the community and better have students before they come to, or learners before they would come to Georgia Tech, have access to a Georgia Tech education. So expand access is all of those pieces, and I think well beyond just the traditional student that shows up on our campus.
I love that. They're really like transcending, boundaries and just taking away any barriers to participation. The next question, we're going to go back to President Cabrera, and then I'll go to Dean Alavi. But President Cabrera, our well-being goal, cultivate well-being, is to strengthen our culture of well-being and create an environment of holistic learning where all members of our community can grow and learn to lead healthy, purposeful, and impactful lives. And so since this is a goal about well-being for everyone, what changes are planned for Georgia Tech to make that goal a reality?
Well, first, this was a very interesting surprise during the process that this came out very strongly. And honestly, this is one we owe to students, because students were the ones who from the very beginning said this has to be at the very top. Faculty and staff also, but it was clearly, it was mostly the students who pushed this, and they were absolutely right. And the idea is that when you come to Georgia Tech, just from the student standpoint, when you come to Georgia Tech, you need something more than just a solid education. Yes, we will give you a world-class education, and yes, we'll give you the tools to start a successful career, but there's got to be beyond that. We need to give you the life habits, the tools to also live a good life. This is a very precious time where you spend here as a student. 4 or 5 years of your life. If all you do is learn how to solve differential equations or learn how to analyze circuits, or learn how to read a balance sheet, or whatever it is we teach you. Well, you'll get that for sure. There's no other way. But if that's all we do, it's almost like what a wasted opportunity. We know that in our culture, traditionally at Georgia Tech, this is what made it a surprise. We're very good and sort of proud about how tough Georgia Tech is, to the point that people still use the phrase, I got out, as opposed to I graduated. It's almost like you come here, it's tough, it's hard, you suffer through it, you graduate, you get out, and then one day, once you're rich and famous, you look back and say, yes, I did it because I endured. This is not, by the way, an attempt to make Georgia Tech any easier, by the way. Let me clarify that, in the sense that we're a rigorous academic institution. That's not going to change. We're proud of that. That's who we are. That is not incompatible. In fact, it should be compatible with helping people lead good lives, to develop the tools to have a robust physical and mental health. We have seen issues of mental health in our very community in very painful ways recently. Yeah. But in the broader society, how issues of mental health are on the rise. These are real issues. We deal with them daily. We have to address them. So what this is a commitment that we're making today in this plan. We're making a public commitment that we're going to be very intentional about building in programs to help our students, not only our students, faculty and staff, really feel better, do better, grow their physical and mental well-being because we're part of Georgia Tech. Again, this is perhaps one of the most challenging aspects of Georgia Tech, because we have identified it as a super important, but it's perhaps the one that is less connected to our history. So we have already identified some areas of immediate action, but I think making that statement in that strategic plan is a hugely important first step.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to cover the last goal, which is lead by example, and then we'll go to some of the questions from the audience. So this one is for Dean Alavi, leading by example. So our goal for lead by example is to lead and inspire by example by creating a culture of deliberate innovation in all our practices and be an example of efficiency, sustainability, ethics, equity, and inclusion. So can you describe what you see as the kind of culture we need to create at Georgia Tech in order to achieve this goal?
First of all, in my view, this really is the goal that is the issue of where the rubber meets the road. We cannot say something and then do something else. We need to walk the talk, so to speak. So with that, all those issues that you brought up, all those practices and behaviors you brought up, inclusion and diversity, issues around ethics, issues around efficiency, issues around well-being, they are very important, not only from a social perspective, but from a credibility standpoint for us as a Georgia Tech. So in order to promote those kind of behavior, in order to succeed in those dimensions, we have to have a culture that is open to learning and open to innovation. And more importantly, a culture that embraces change and agility. To cultivate a culture like that, one really needs to, number one, be very explicit in articulating the values, just like the way we have done that in our strategic plan. And having done that, then one has to create an environment and align incentives with the desired behavior and practices. And then in addition to that, create that environment that is actually a safe environment and an environment that people can learn and experiment to some extent to learn, and do great teamwork. So those are the pieces that all need to come together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, there is much work to do. There's a lot to be proud of. There's a lot to be excited about, and there's a lot of work to do. So we have a number of questions related to just thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals. What does that mean for units that are already engaged in work that's similar to that? Serve, Learn, Sustain has had a great first start and a reach. And how do you envision those concepts being incorporated into the curriculum and really programmatically supported as we go forward?
So what's important about the strategic plan and why it is so important that it came to be the way it did, that it was the result of our community coming together. This is not a top-down plan. This is not a Cabrera plan or Provost plan that now just like everybody sit back and wait until you hear back from us. We're taking it to heart. Don't get me wrong. I mean, in every single one of our conversations, we're trying to figure out what is the next step, how do we get ourselves organized, how do we invest the limited resources we have. But the power of this is for each one of us to read it, to internalize it, and to ask yourself, how can I help this institution move in this direction? So everybody has a role to play at all levels. We have deans who are working on their own strategic plans, and they're now taking this and say, okay, what does this mean for my college? We have our colleague Shawi Abdallah, our Executive Vice President of Research, who's already developing the Institute research plan, and he's taking these ideas and figuring out to do. But I've had conversations with the faculty team behind SLS, for example, and that's the entire conversation. How can we use what we've learned from SLS to support these ideas in the strategic plan? So my message is, again, don't wait. I mean, for sure, hold us accountable, because this is going to be sort of our marching orders. But beyond that, don't wait to hear from us. Just let's all get going. You know, let's make it. Let's take this document and really make it into reality.
Yeah, thank you. So we have another question about related to Amplify Impact. And the question is, did the Amplify Impact group discuss ways that tech can help beyond its traditional roles in research and education, such as talent acquisition, procurement, purchasing locally, hiring locally, capacity building? So this was this theme of anchor institution, which actually showed up in two of the goal areas, which is Georgia Tech really being that central convener, igniter, facilitator, supporter, champion for the communities around us. What were some of the other things that came out of those conversations on Anchor Institution that stood out for you?
I don't want to monopolize this discussion, but I do have some examples of this, because I'll tell you, even before the plan was complete, and our Executive Vice President of Administration and Finance, who was in the room with us, Kelly Fox, as the ideas were being firmed up, okay, she was already thinking about all of our business processes and how they could help support this idea in very specific ways. So, for example, we were having conversations about expanding access. Some students had raised questions about the diversity of the food truck options on our campus. Something very concrete. She looked into it. She made decisions. Now we have more diverse options. She was thinking about how to organize her own team, and she's still, trying to figure out as the new chief of that whole business side of the institute. But then she's already figured out that if sustainability is such a central part of our work, that there's got to be a champion at the very top, and that's reflected in her. So I guess the answer is absolutely, and that has to do with the whole lead by example that Maryam was discussing earlier, which is it's not just, there cannot be a disconnect between what we teach and what we research and what we do. And when there is a disconnect, which at times there is, we get called on it. So,
and maybe I'll say, as you were just talking, Sonia, the thing that that jogged my memory was, and we haven't really talked about COVID, right? We did a lot of this right in the middle of of COVID.
Yeah, oops.
And two things were really remarkable about, I think, how the strategic plan allowed us to kind of step out of COVID for a moment.
Yep.
There's so much energy, so much positivity, folks being together, even if it's virtually around the strategic plan, I think really, really helped. I think the COVID-related moment that relates to the Amplify Impact is what we're affectionately calling rapid response, right? All of the amazing things that we did over the last 7 or 8 months, it wasn't necessarily research. It wasn't necessarily education. It's that space in between where people had tons and tons of great ideas, whether it's face shields, whether it's intubation box, whether it's the surveillance testing program, all of these amazing things that I don't think we ever maybe even imagined we could do that, my gosh, we did. And so, like, how do we hold on to that moment? The impact that that's having that's really outside of our traditional research and education mission, trying to figure out how to hold on to that moment and use it to move us forward.
Yeah, it was a powerful catalyst. So here's a powerful, important, and provocative question from a student, which has several likes. So really related to the culture and the environment, particularly for students of color and students from different geographies, and creating the right environment and the right culture at Georgia Tech for everyone to feel a sense of belonging and inclusion and equity and fairness. And so, the question is really about how exactly is Georgia Tech going to address these challenges around ethnocentrism and exclusion that may be subtle or not understood, or people not fully aware of it? Like, what is the work that we're going to do to create a greater sense of awareness and accountability and a culture of belonging for all?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that the thought that comes to mind is all the social unrest, social injustice, Black Lives Matter, kind of systemic racism that might show up, in our own institution. That also, those moments also, appeared really prominently during the strategic plan. And I think that conversation, even separate from the strategic plan, on what it is the Institute wants to do, is going to do around related issues, I think also is really a force into making sure that the things that you talked about really do persist through the plan.
Yeah.
The strength of an organization really shows at times of crisis, right? And boy, have we been tested in 2020 in so many ways, and it's been tough. And yet, I'll tell you, when I look back, and I can't wait for 2020 to be over, by the way, in spite of what I'm about to say. When I look back, I hope we're now in 2021 and things are better, because this test was tough as heck. But when I look back, I'm incredibly proud of what Georgia Tech did. And I think we're all going to look back, as awful as 2020 was, and we're going to say we're better because we went through that. And one is how this community got together to fight this disease, but also how this community got together when these big questions were raised about equality, about racial injustice in our country and here. And I participated in conversations that were difficult, times raw, that were profound, that involved people on the stage, that involved people in this room, people across Georgia Tech, where we opened our hearts, and really was moving and inspiring, and it gave me a sense that we have what it takes. I mean, the journey is hard. I mean, we have so many challenges. We acknowledge those in the strategic plan. I mean, for example, we are in a city that is majority Black, with an incredible history of African American culture, and yet less than 7% of our undergraduate students are Black. We have to face that. It's not to say, I mean, I'm proud of the progress that we have made, but we have to confront those facts and say we have to do better. What is it? Where are we failing in attracting talent from specific groups? So I think this moment that we've gone through that has tested us, we have responded, we have shown that we have what it takes, and now we have made a public commitment to doing better. So can't wait to work with the community. Yeah.
Okay, so one last question coming from the chat, and this relates to what you just said, which is accountability. How are we going to know that we're making progress on these things that in many ways are sort of broad concepts, but how are we going to measure how well we're doing when it comes to things like well-being? And what's the plan for that?
I think it's only fair that you take one of these questions.
I think that's Sonia's question.
I think it is my question. I'm actually super excited to answer this question because the working group spent a lot of time thinking about measures of success. How are we going to know not only that we're making progress, but when we've achieved the desired result? I call it two kinds of measures. There's lead measures, which are the things that measure outputs, and lag measures measure outcomes. It's the immediate term and then the longer term, and we've got to have both. And so as we implement the strategic plan, we will be connecting those measures of success and engaging in a cadence of rigorous self-examination to determine whether we're making the progress that we desire to achieve. And if we're not, it's a great opportunity for us to go step back, work with the implementation teams and say, all right, what do we need to do differently? How are we going to come back at this? If we're not achieving the desired results, how can we get there? Or if we are, what have we learned from our successes and how do we continue to build on that? So we will have a structure that we're wrapping around this process of portfolio and project management so that we're actually able to measure and connect, but more importantly, to share stories of success, to really celebrate. Today is the first celebration, but we're going to have a lot more celebrations as we look forward. Our celebrations are going to look different, and we'll have just this whole library and catalog of our celebrations in these different environments and situations that we're in. So
just to add, I think that in my own sense, the biggest mechanisms of accountability are Sonia and Sonia's boss, who is our Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff, Frank Neville, who once this becomes our official strategic plan, knowing these two, they want, they will take it incredibly seriously. I mean, dashboards, reports, show me the money, annual goals. Yeah. So this is the beginning of now creating a sense of discipline to hold ourselves.
Thank you. It's a real honor, and it's been a great pleasure to work with all of you and to get to know you in a much deeper way, and all of you and everyone who has contributed to getting us to this beautiful, amazing milestone and commencement on this journey toward our future.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.